Hello, everyone. Welcome back for your coffee break. Hope you enjoyed it. And the ocean life, it's kind of amazing. But we have two more things for you. The next one is a panel discussion. It's about recruiting and retaining workers through social impact. So employees, especially younger ones today, care more than ever about issues like social justice and climate change and many others. So the question is, how can employers listen better to those concerns and reflect workers' values in corporate policies, volunteer programs, and philanthropic work that translates into real impact? So please help me welcome our panelist and our moderator for this panel. She is Alexis Hauk, a journalist and editor who specializes in health. Right now she's providing communication support on vaccine safety for the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. So welcome to our panel. Bring them on up.
Hello and welcome. My name is Alexis Hauk, and I will be the moderator for this panel. Really excited to get going. I think before we dive into these questions, it would be great if just everyone could one by one provide a little introduction of what you do and your title, anything else you want to add.
Yes, well, hello, everyone. Pleasure to be here. I am Ayanna Cummings. I am Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Justice with Compass Group National Accounts. I am not new to the D&I space, but I am fairly new to the Compass Group environment. I've been there since October of 2020, but I've been in this space since about the year 2000 when I graduated from my alma mater, Hampton University. I am an Atlanta native, and I'm very happy to be among you today.
Hi everyone, my name's Julia Levy and I work for a company called Commscope. If you use a cell phone, which I think everyone in here does, you're using one of our products and services, but probably never heard of Commscope before. I lead global talent acquisition. I live here in Atlanta in Sandy Springs, and I'm really happy to be here.
Hi, I'm Vivian Greentree. I'm a Senior Vice President and Head of Corporate Citizenship at Fiserv, another large company you might not have heard of, but we do payment processing, point of sale technology. So I like to say, even if you haven't heard of us, we know who you are. Kidding, but legally. Legit. I too am an Atlanta native, proud Bulldog fan. So I also rooted for the Rams because of Matthew Stafford. So I don't know. We're all from, I know, half-half. But my purview in corporate citizenship at Fiserv is associate and community engagement, diversity, inclusion, including our 8 employee resource groups, and strategic philanthropy. And even though I'm from Atlanta, I've recently moved back in 2019, right before the end times, because my husband was in the Navy and retired, and for the first time in 20 years, we got to choose where we were going to live, and we chose Atlanta.
Awesome.
Right?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lynette Bell, and I am president of the Truist Foundation. And for those of you who have not heard of Truist, Truist is a formerly SunTrust Bank and BB&T who just merged at the end of 2019 to form Truist Financial Corp. I don't know if you've seen our signs going purple this weekend, so we are all in as the new brand of Truist, so exciting times for us. I have just left Atlanta a year ago after being here for 20 years, and I guess I became a peach even though I'm from Florida, and I am now in Charlotte, North Carolina. And so at Truist Financial Corp, we want to make sure that we stay engaged with our community partners, really listening to community to drive strategic impact.
My name is Rick Kearney. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Rise Against Hunger. We're an international nonprofit, and our mission is to end hunger. So we work with lots of corporations, individuals, and provide the opportunity to provide a way out of hunger and towards sustainability for people in developing countries. So we're glad to be here. I'm a North Carolina native who married an Atlanta native. So I'm an Atlantean by marriage, but glad to be here as well.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. So we'll just dive right in because our time is short. But I did want to make a quick note that it's just exciting to be leading this panel right now, especially in the wake of, I don't know if you all are familiar with Paul Farmer at Partners in Health, but who recently passed away yesterday. But there's, someone that made a great social impact. And so it's, as always, a very timely subject. So I wanted to ask the panelists, and I'll probably, for each question, we'll do maybe a couple answers and then move to the next. But if you really want to, get in there, just raise your hand and I'll call on you. So start out, there are a lot of, issues to care about these days. How do you pick and define which important issues and causes to prioritize? And then how do you define and measure success in this area when it comes to your company or organization's efforts? Yeah.
I guess I'll dive in.
Great.
So we have a community outreach prong among 10 different multi-pronged approach prongs for diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice. And we allow request that the employees have input and say. So we have committees that are open to all associates, and we come together and do polls and votes and have informal discussions that allow everyone to say, we'd like to rank the organization partners with a brief description of each one, whether it be LGBTQIA youth safe havens or BIPOC serving institutions or college-bound preparation type institutions and so forth that provide scholarships to college-bound students. And so we did that process this year, and we came up with, out of maybe 100 different organizations, the top 4 partners that we were going to try to reach out to and partner with. And of course, another aspect of our engagement, Compass Group is the largest hospitality and food services company in the world. And so we would be remiss if we didn't acknowledge that we have capacity to do something with respect to food insecurity, homelessness, and things that provide food to food insecure households. And so we added that to the list of places to reach out to and try to partner with. But it turned out that some of the partners were bombarded, I believe, with donation requests and partnership requests, and just couldn't provide the level of engagement that we needed, which is a year-round, constant communication, that type of really partnering with people. And so we ended up partnering with members of various organizations that are majority BIPOC serving this year. We had, out of maybe 15 to 20 community partners, I would say greater than 50% were BIPOC serving organizations. And that was both convenient and fit with our mission to do more to help under-resourced and underserved communities. And so we were lucky in that way. But while some of our partnerships are in the greater Seattle area, we also have various field sites here in Atlanta and Charlotte and Las Colinas, Texas, and Reno, Nevada, and so forth. So we have partners all over the country that facilitate these partnerships year-round. And not only do we provide donations, particularly during the month of Give when we're running our major messaging and campaigns, but also at the end of year donations and when employees decide they want to run their own fundraising campaigns. Of course, Compass Group is not bound by the client's mandate that we only do so within certain months, so we can do those types of things year-round. And so the priority was, of course, employee-driven, in other words, and the measurement of success pertains to our KPIs. So, we establish our measures based upon the type of partner they are, whether it be the number of meals served, the number of communities impacted, the number of people reached, and so forth. And so there are various measures, quantitative and qualitative, that we glean insights from.
Great, thank you so much. Actually, I also wanted to make sure, I wanted to ask Julia, since you're sort of in the different arena in a lot of ways from our other panelists, can you speak to how sort of a commitment to the core values of where you work play out in your work in human resources and talent acquisition? So, take it away.
So when I first joined Commscope in 2019, we had just rolled out a refreshed purpose and mission and tweaked the values a little bit. And so it's been great because I started that just was rolled out. We started doing focus groups and developed an employer value proposition. We also have a pulse survey where we listen to our employees and we take that data and information. We developed an employer value proposition that then we've been activating, and that the messaging around our values, our purpose, telling the stories of not just our employees, but how our products and services help communities. And so, for example, we're a communications technology company, and we did a lot around helping connect the unconnected, especially through COVID, when having connection to internet is so vital to school children, healthcare systems, et cetera. And so being able to bring those stories to life so that candidates and prospects could see not just our products, but also really see the core values and the people living those values every day.
Thank you so much for that. This next question I wanted to perhaps direct to Lynette and Rick, get your thoughts on with some of the community-led efforts that you have been a part of and spearheaded and partnerships within communities. Rather than sort of diving into the communities and doing maybe a one-time volunteer project or just sort of going in and then leaving, I know that you all have spoken about creating initiatives or philanthropic giving programs that are intended to be sustainable. So what are some of the best practices for ensuring longevity and reach and just real meaningful impact that will sustain over time?
So I will say that at our foundation, it's a corporate-private foundation, and one of the things that we did in the course of merging two financial institutions headquartered in the Southeast is that we hosted listening sessions with community-based organizations and nonprofits to really provide insight or get insight from them into what are the needs. And whether we were in Baltimore, Miami, or Macon, Georgia, we got to hear directly what they needed to have that long-term engagement and impact to change what is happening in communities, particularly as we were looking into with COVID and then social justice, really getting their understanding and meeting them where they are versus coming in, hey, we got the great idea and we can fix it for you. And then on top of that, we engaged our employees to also help us understand and decipher some of the things, because they're the boots on the ground. When we talk about the branches and the regional presidents who are in the commercial side of the house, who are actually on the ground making loan decisions for clients, those clients are part of neighborhoods. And so we wanted to make sure that we incorporate this duality of what is happening in the marketplace from a community-based organization, nonprofit, but also from an employee standpoint. The second thing we did to kind of measure that impact is that once we identify what that real purpose was around strategy, we started investing our dollars not to just hit short-term goals and scatter seeds everywhere, but really to drive concentrated impact and look at those systemic barriers and try to help eradicate those. And so that's the thing that we're doing on a strategic platform. But for employees, what we also heard as we were talking to the community is that, hey, we need things that happen. We know that every company offers benefits for employees. And so as our employees were volunteering in communities and really supporting nonprofits during the pandemic, we provided a matching gift program. For every dollar that they provided to a nonprofit of choice, we turned around and matched that. And so we gave out about $1.2 million last year in our matching gift program for employees who are committed to volunteering, loving their nonprofit organizations or community-based organizations. So for us, it was a dual purpose that we put out there around strategy.
Nice.
Yeah, and Lynette, it's funny, we take a very similar approach, just not in Baltimore and Macon, Georgia. It may be in Senegal, in Malawi, Mali, or Zimbabwe, but we also work with the local communities, because when we go into an area for sustainable development, we go in with a plan to leave. And our goal, it may start with a meal, that's one of our campaigns, because often there's an absence of nutrition or healthcare, so we may start with a meal, but our long-term plan is for us to leave and for the community to be self-sustainable. An example would be in Zimbabwe, where we entered into a partnership with several other organizations to do a school feeding program in South Africa. We did that for 4 years. And after we exited in 2019, as of last year, they were able to produce enough food of their own to replace what we formerly shipped. So we also do that. We have a staff of only 90 people, so we are not boots on the ground. So what we rely on would be your boots, not only in the U.S., but on the ground potentially. So we really consider ourselves a connect the dots organization, because we can identify the needs in areas where other people may not be. from the local input from the leadership and on the ground partners. And then we see people here at Truist Foundation or BB&T/Sun Trust, Truist, or anywhere else that have a desire to be engaged and be a part of it. So we can provide that linkage, not only here for the beginning point of perhaps a meal, but also for the ending in the continuing education for the sustainability through agriculture or job development. So we like to connect the dots between the needs here and the resources and provide the opportunity for other people to be engaged in the work that we're working on.
Nice. Yeah, that actually leads to sort of a follow-up question. It's not one of my pre-planned questions, but just around, what you just mentioned about connecting the dots. How do you, I guess this is open to all of you if you want to respond, but just how do you look for ways to kind of fill the gaps in your own capacity, perhaps? So how do you look for partnerships? How do you approach, building with other organizations that you may not have partnered with before, but that can help serve some of that role in making an impact?
I'll jump in on that one because that's actually, that's social impact done right. That's that triple bottom line. The best case scenario is when you are, as a company, using your first best purpose that is aligning, your purpose with your profit. And so because you're allowing, your team members to come to work every day, super excited about what they do, you're reducing barriers and obstacles for them to see themselves through your policies, your benefits, your processes, your systems, so that they can use that discretionary effort to be creative and say, hey, if accounts payable is what I do every day, or I'm I do client services for small businesses, and all of my examples will be small businesses because that's what we do, point of sale. But we want to use our unique special space and place to increase access, opportunity, and awareness of what we do to all small businesses. And in my case, we say small, diverse businesses because we leverage that through our employee resource group. So if we have, a veteran on an account and they say, we want to make sure that this veteran-owned business has the best point of sale device, and also we want to wrap around services and let you know, here's nonprofit groups nationally or locally in scope that can help you find access to capital. Truist is a partner in that, or find chambers of commerce, whether it's large, small, do they have healthcare plans? Do they have pitch competitions? And that's what my office ensures happens, is that connecting the dots both on the internal side, so that operations is talking to product development, is talking to talent acquisition, is talking to communications, so that when we do show up somewhere, whether it's volunteering, skills-based volunteering, or we're trying to sell you a product or get you to work with us, we do it holistically, and that's kind of like the tip of the iceberg. Everything else that was underneath it, you have to have, by that point, the KPIs, the representation, the flow charts behind the scenes that say, if I'm not the right door, who is? Because if I'm trying to recruit any one population to my company, Julia and I were talking about this before, I don't care if you come to marketing or operations or HR or corporate citizenship, I want you on my team, as Nelly Furtado said, because I want you on my team. So does everyone else right now want the talent, and the companies that do connect the dots and fill the gaps on not just showing up and getting a paycheck, but allow that fulfillment, that purpose, that meaning. They're the ones who are going to, recruit the talent and then retain the talent, promote the talent, engage the talent, so that the talent, stays.
Great, thank you so much. That really leads me to my next question, which is around something that we're all aware of, which is that we've come off of a period that is being referred to as the Great Resignation. A reported 33 million Americans quit their jobs between the spring of 2021 and the beginning of 2022. And they were citing things like extreme burnout and low wages, lots of reasons in addition. So we know that commitment to social impact can begin sort of from the inside out for companies. So even if you have, great things like outreach volunteering, if there's dysfunctional leadership or dissatisfaction or high turnover, those are still areas that will, affect your own team, your own family. So what are some of the ways that you have worked to ensure that your company backs up your commitment to these values by firmly supporting your teams and staff?
Yeah. So I am big on goal action alignment, and one of our prongs has to do with cultural assessment and systems analysis, which is a qualitative procedure that I devised in containing a rubric, like a weighted criterion scorecard, where we essentially take all of the archived data from the websites or the intranet or social media and so forth, gather it and score it along various dimensions that we've established as objective key result indicators of what we're trying to get to in terms of our actionable alignment with our values, our guiding principles and so forth. And so that's one way we do that. Great. Yeah.
We've done a lot of things for our staff with discretionary time off and expanded parental leave and things that provide them sort of a sense of internal satisfaction and ability to relate with their family and support themselves better. But I think we also, for our partners, we have sought to provide something beyond just the initial touch. I know we talked about sustainability and going deeper. I know after 15 years with a nonprofit, when I started, it was enough for someone just to do something and feel good about it and have a sort of an emotional response. It's more of a heart response. Mm-hmm. But I think what we've needed to do internally, as well as for our volunteer partners, is add another P to that passion, which is purpose. Because we saw that not only our employees, but our volunteers, whether it's skill-based or large numbers of volunteers, they needed something that they could take from their heart to their head, from the passion to the purpose, and really feel that their efforts resulted in something significant. So for me and for our organization and for a lot of our organizations that we partner with, providing that purpose to the engagement really did add a layer of commitment, and I think a self-satisfaction. It certainly makes our staff who have the opportunity to spend all day for their job thinking about the 2.8 million people that we assist. So that you think should be enough, but it's not, because if it's passion is rooted in emotion and purpose is rooted in decision. Mm-hmm. So it really gives people a next step to follow.
Thank you so much. So what you just said about, adding that level of commitment and tangible results leads to my next question, which is really focusing on a specific social impact issue that I know is a priority for a lot of organizations, especially in the wake of 2020. So in 2020, our country underwent something that some have referred to as a racial reckoning in the wake of George Floyd's murder, also the murders of Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor. A lot of companies pledged money toward racial justice, but in 2021, media outlets like Fortune reported that a whole year later, $50 billion pledged by U.S. corporations working toward undoing longstanding racial inequity. Almost none of that had materialized. So obviously that was disillusioning news for some people. But I think what it gets to, and what I'd like to ask you about, is how does your company organization, in this specific arena, how are you working to follow through on a commitment to racial justice, diversity and inclusion, and how are you ensuring that you walk the walk rather than talk the talk? Yes.
So I will say that after the racial justice movement, one of the things that we as a foundation looked at is that how do we embed racial equity into our processes? We talk about process, procedures, flow charts. How do you embed racial equity into assessing gifting dollars out in communities to change and create change that happens and eradicate systemic barriers. And so we incorporate it into our DNA from the application process when you come online to our portal to apply for grant dollars, all the way to our decision-making power, as well as to what impact that nonprofit organization or partner will drive. And so we want sustainable, long-term impact to underserved communities. I will say one of the things that we learned during the pandemic and then with social justice is that when we looked at the small businesses that are the cornerstone of our country, over 46% were in jeopardy of not reopening. And so we wanted to look at, well, who's impacted by that? And it was mostly BIPOC businesses, Black, Indigenous, people of color owned businesses. And so our foundation has really leaned into addressing those issues. And so we're going to work with nonprofit organizations and intermediaries to help drive that change. We invested $40 million into the co-creation of the Corner Square Community Development Corporation to actually help address BIPOC issues for women and for Black, Indigenous, people of color owned businesses as we look at providing equity to them. And so we want to continue to do things like that. Like when we see ideas and issues that come about, we want to make sure that our system is equitable to begin with before we start investing out into our communities.
Yeah, we
can go down the row.
Our employee resource groups, we've always aligned them against the small, diverse business community, knowing that even before COVID, access to capital, access to network, your network is your net worth. And we've as we started working with the veteran community 10 years ago, we recognized certainly grants were important, but really to be sustainable and systemic, it's the access to that network. It's the access to capital in a systemic way, because even all small businesses, but especially small, diverse businesses, the ones that were supposed to be getting the PPP couldn't access it through their regular bank because they weren't big enough to get the lion's share of the attention. And so we saw that happening in real time because they were our clients. And so we put together, really with that alignment of purpose and profit, because knowing that if we wanted our clients to succeed and be in business next year, there was an inflection point that we had to be there for them. Ones that had only taken cash, we needed to very quickly say, how can you take online? How can you take credit? If you're a restaurant, how can you move to door delivery, order to pick up, contactless payments? But along with that access to cash, immediate grants. And then we also knew those incubators, those accelerators, minority deposit institutions to show up authentically and holistically, recognizing that it was a moment, but it really needs to be a movement, because some systems aren't working for people, and that we are in a position where we can change that. We can change, looking at the way that we get access to capital and in traditional means, and make sure more women owned businesses, more minority-owned businesses. At one point, I think the estimate was like 40% of small Black-owned businesses would not make it through COVID. And 99% of all businesses in the U.S. are small businesses. And so, you like to think, I'm from a small town, but Main Street really does drive Wall Street. And so as companies look to see how they can make a difference, and that's really upsetting that the commitments haven't been made. I hadn't seen that research, but I think that is important to look at the companies, because when we talk about KPIs and representation, it's going on companies' websites and saying, what is represented here? What are your core values? And what do you do to make the world, a better place, so that you're not just doing your product or service, but that you are creating lasting impact? And that's not even like a Pollyanna. That's Larry Fink, his letter to BlackRock, the largest private equity firm in the world. That's what he asks every year is, what are you doing, not just to have sustainable outcome, but really, or output, but really what is that thing that will allow you to stay in business, to be in business for the communities that you live, work, and play in. So, that's, when you ask, going back and looking what companies committed to, that I feel like shareholders, I feel like I feel like peer review groups are going to be asking that in shareholder letters coming up.
Thank you.
Yeah. From a talent acquisition perspective, we've really spent a lot of time on unconscious bias with our hiring managers, so hiring manager training, and investing in looking at our processes. We are not always going to get it right, but we're going to always try and do better. And I always look at things in an iterative way, and doing well today, how can I be better tomorrow with our processes? So we're looking at barriers to entry. So we had certain jobs that had an education requirement. Our internships had a GPA requirement that we dropped down when we looked at the different, the makeup of our internship programs. We're a global organization, so diversity looks very different in the US than it does in other countries. We have, instead of having a lot of different resource groups, we have one diversity and inclusion business network. So I'm on the leadership council for that. I hear a lot of what's going on in the business. I listen to our employees. And then we look at the different geographic regions to be able to make and affect change in our hiring processes and application process, et cetera.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to say that we recognize the magnitude of the problem, first and foremost, just establishing that while we want to change the world and we set out to do that, we know that it's going to take tackling some really big problems in this environment and within our organization and within society at large. And so acknowledging the severity of the problem is one thing. We have a certain level of recognizance that we've come to with respect to racial equity and injustice. And of course, we align with our clients who are the major Fortune 500s that are very much empowered to do good and to make a difference monetarily and otherwise, but also through our vendor and supplier portfolio diversity. I think I'm probably not going to do justice to the answer to the question because of the time frame we're given, but through the vendor and supplier diversity portfolio, we have an opportunity to onboard 50% diverse businesses into our portfolio and make that a 50% diverse spend within a certain time frame. Those are just some of the KPIs we have with respect to all of the NORAM, North America field sites and the headquarters, as well as an incubator program, as you touched on, Dr. Greentree. And then also we're establishing soon a second chance entrepreneurship program where we're going to kind of go around these corporate requirements that would preclude people who have encountered the criminal justice system from coming into a corporate environment for certain types of violations on their records, and being able to train them on how to be an entrepreneur, and then take that training and not just provide vendor partner services for us, but for all the companies they can scale to, and grow their business. So that's one way we're going to leverage those opportunities. And of course, you have internship programs. There's a lot of ways you can impact the community, but as I said, those are just some of the things.
Thank you so much. And actually, I think you just perfectly summarized how tough it can be to cram all of this into a 40-minute time window, because these are big issues. And I think that makes me curious to get a couple of you to share your thoughts on, I think when it comes to, racial inequity, and racism and, climate change, or, poverty, hunger, it's very easy to probably get stuck behind how enormous the challenges are, right? You can be working around the clock, to try to make a meaningful impact, but I'm sure you probably have moments where you're a little overwhelmed. So how do you push through that and make goals that are attainable, but also still, kind of leave room for building bigger? Yes.
Yeah, as a nonprofit, of course, we can't commit large sums of dollars to those issues, even though we recognize the importance. And I think we have stayed focused because we also understand our mission is to end hunger. And so we have really encouraged our staff in all of the areas. We started a Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Council, but we always say, in the context of what we're talking about and what we're spending our time on, how will that increase the impact for those people that we serve and end hunger? Mm-hmm. Because we have to remember what we want to change it all, as our panelists said. You can't. You can't change it all. You can't do it all. And it's hard to corral a bunch of world changers who came to a nonprofit to do that, but to stay focused. And whatever that is, if it's diversity in your supply chain, I think it's important that you allow the employees the personal space and the space to discuss what's bothering them, what they feel, what they encounter. And we spend a lot of time focusing on how we can support our team in what they encounter day to day. What is their experience day to day as a person, as an employee, and how that interacts. So we've focused on the people we serve, and it's what we're spending our time on, furthering their well-being and our own people, and giving them the venue to express it, but understanding we can't fix it all. But we want to make their day-to-day experience one that's pleasant.
Great.
One of my favorite mentors, he gave me some really great advice about this a very long time ago, because people like that are in this room, it is singing to the choir to say, don't get burned out. Try to focus on the positive, find the delta, and we're always trying to get up there. But he said, think big, act small, move quick. And so that is always, have your big, audacious, the goal, hairy goal up there, think big, but act small, like act locally. What can you do today? And then move quick. And we do, we have a bias towards action. Do I ask for forgiveness a lot? Yes, instead of permission. But I think, in these jobs that we're in, or when you're trying to lean into something that doesn't exist yet, or you're trying to create something or co-create something or collaborate, it's always going to be a little uncomfortable. And that's where a lot of us are a lot of the time. So learning not to, to pause and not quit. So you have that, think big, act small, move quick.
And I would add that for our company, as we look at this, it's like, what is that shared value that we're trying to create? Not only for the communities, but for our employees. And so we put the big goals out there, knowing that we're tackling large ecosystems that have been in structure for a long time that need to have some disruption to it. And so the team, meaning our employees, actually come up with a lot of the great ideas like, hey, if that's the big goal, then here's some tactics to get it done, right?
Yeah.
Dr. Greentree, you mentioned that it's like, what is that big, hairy, audacious goal that we're going to do? And so then put everybody to work to tactically to disassemble it so that we can make a difference and make that change happen. For our team, when you talked about supplier diversity, we talk about how do we put DNA of social equity into how we invest dollars on the foundation side. Well, for every grant we make, we ask real hard questions for our grantee, like how diversified is your board? Mm-hmm. For every contractor, consultant, how diverse is your team that is going to support you? I think it takes those small things to look at all ecosystems internally, including the ones that you work for, and go, what exists today that needs to be disassembled?
Mm-hmm. I think something really important also is being able to pivot so that, who knew where we'd still be wearing masks today or what was going to happen in 2020? And I can tell you, I had a whole lot of plans of things that I wanted and needed to do, and they just got thrown aside, and I said, okay, now let me pivot. It looks different. This direction looks different than this direction, but I know that the values and the purpose and what we're driving to, we're still gonna get to that end place. It just might be a little bit of a different path than you imagined. So being agile and forgiving yourself if you're not hitting the metric or the number, just brush yourself off and start all over or reset your goal line to be more realistic.
And I'll just add to this, I think we have such a capacity to pour into other people and to other causes that we fail to fill our own cups. So staying inspired within your own space and being in the right mental space and guarding your own well-being is very important for me. If I have to just decompress and walk away from business at some point and take hours of time to myself, I'll do that because I know that's important for me to be able to continue to pour into this work.
Great, thank you so much. I know we only have a couple minutes left, but I think what all of you have been really unpacking here is sort of creating a culture of empathy within your workspace. So, like you just said, not just filling your own cup, but you spend massive amounts of hours with your coworkers, right? So, I guess we'll do a flash round here, but what does a greater culture of empathy and compassion do from a business standpoint? How does it help your business? How does it help your organization?
I'll jump in. Impact and inclusion both start with I for a reason, because I think they're individual. You could, whether you are, whether you manage people, whether you manage yourself, those actions create impact, they create inclusion, and kind of together, it's that tapestry that we provide. And it's also, in terms of a return on investment, there is a return on inclusion. There is a return on impact. And shareholders, investors, they're looking at that triple bottom line, and they're asking, what is your diverse spend? What is your talent pipeline? What's your board diversity? What is your social impact? And so I do think, it could be return on inclusion or return on investment, but both start with I.
Thank you all so much. This has been a wonderful, we've got like 10 seconds. This clock has been counting down this whole time. Yeah, this has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you all so much. And thank you all for being here. And if you have any questions, I'm sure the panelists will be around to help answer them after. Thanks so much.